Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and can I say first of all thank you to the European Centre for the Study of Extremism for having organised this invaluable conference today and for having invited me to speak at it. And can I also say congratulations to the Centre on its successful launch yesterday. Now, in Britain, the public are used to their politicians and their journalists alike telling them that Turkey is where East meets West, that Turkey is a force for stability in the world. Well, my speech will not contain such romantic drivel and will not make such untenable arguments. Instead, my speech will be brutally candid about the real nature of Turkey and will demonstrate that Turkey's policies in the Eastern Mediterranean and in the Middle East are anything but conducive to peace and stability in these regions. According to the West, which is essentially America and Britain, Turkey is a force for stability, a country that is essential to the well-being of the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East, and in more recent times, the West has projected Turkey as indispensable in the fight against Islamist terrorism. In short, the West lauds Turkey as invaluable to maintaining regional peace. However, just like in Charles Dickens's The Old Curiosity Shop, a facade has been put up. Far from being invaluable to peace, Turkey is, in fact, a great destabilising force to the region which it encompasses. Due to Turkey's geostrategic importance, the West has, since the Cold War, allowed Ankara to act with impunity when pursuing its regional foreign policy and at great cost to countries in the region. And in return, Turkey acts as a crucial set of eyes and ears for the West, allows American nuclear warheads to be stationed on Turkish territory, permits American and British air forces to be housed on Turkish soil, and works towards helping the West to achieve its foreign policy objectives in the region, which has served to severely undermine the security and stability of the countries there. So to help understand the volatile state of the Eastern Mediterranean and of the Middle East, it is essential to cast a spotlight on how Turkey conducts its foreign policy in these regions. And the case studies to examine are Cyprus, Iraq, Libya, and Syria. Only by casting aside the facade put up by the West of Turkey and by dissecting Turkish foreign policies can we begin to learn of the true nature of Turkey and its continuing role as a great force for regional instability. And in doing so, a spotlight will be placed on the West, exposing how it is the fuel for the fires which Turkey has ignited in the aforementioned countries. Turkey's invasion of Cyprus in 1974 not only devastated the constitution, independence and sovereignty of this island, but also devastated international law. Turkey had long territorial designs on Cyprus and had simply waited for an opportunity to expand Turkish influence in the Eastern Mediterranean. However, Ankara would not have gone ahead with its invasion of Cyprus if America had not given its consent to do so. Indeed, Andrei Gromyko, the legendary Soviet foreign minister, referred in his memoirs to a meeting he had with the US Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, in May 1974, 2 months before the Turkish invasion of Cyprus, in which Kissinger told Gromyko that the US would be happy to see the division of the island into two states, Greek and Turkish. Turkey's invasion of Cyprus and its subsequent occupation of 32% of the island has helped to make the Eastern Mediterranean a volatile part of the world where international law now resides in a graveyard. By Turkey having ethnically cleansed 200,000 Greek Cypriots in the north, deployed more than 40,000 Turkish troops to the north, transferred 162,000 colonists from Turkey to the north, and systematically destroyed Greek Cypriot heritage in the north, from destroying churches, to destroying monasteries, to destroying cemeteries. Immense tension has been created in Cyprus, while the island is one of the most militarised parts of the world now, owing to the illegal and massive Turkish military presence in the north. Turkey's catastrophic invasion demonstrated to the world that a country, with the backing of the US, can blatantly disregard international law and act with complete impunity. The Cyprus tragedy also helps to expose British duplicity when it comes to this island. While Britain cannot recognise the so-called Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus because it has no legal basis whatsoever under international law, successive British administrations have allowed this illegal entity to have a de facto embassy on Bedford Square, London, and have allowed its officials to have meetings with Foreign Office representatives. Before I move on to the next case study, I would like to say that there may be some people in the audience thinking, well, Dr. Papadopoulos would have these views about Turkey in the context of Cyprus because of his Greek surname. All I would say to that is, I support the Republic of Cyprus and international law, not because I'm partly of Greek Cypriot heritage, but because it is the correct conviction to have, politically, legally, and morally. Now, Turkey's destabilising of Iraq occurs in two periods. Firstly, from 1991 to 2003, and secondly, in 2008 and 2016. Following the end of the first Gulf War in 1991, the Americans and British established a no-fly zone in northern Iraq to protect the Kurds from Saddam Hussein. However, the US and UK turned a blind eye to the Turkish Air Force violating Iraqi airspace to bomb Kurdish positions in northern Iraq. What would happen in practice is that American and British aircraft returning to their bases in Turkey from having patrolled the no-fly zone in northern Iraq would often pass Turkish aircraft on their way to attack the Kurds there. Now, Turkey's actions were a clear breach of not only the no-fly zone, but also of Iraqi independence and sovereignty. Once again, Ankara demonstrated total contempt for international law, and this was permitted by Washington and London. So the picture emerging here is of a Turkey which is allowed to destabilise its neighbours when it pleases. The next period of Turkish incursions occurred in Iraq occurred in 2008 and this year. Defying the independence and sovereignty of Iraq and disregarding Baghdad's protests, Ankara launched a military incursion into northern Iraq against the Kurds 8 years ago and then again this year. That is a flagrant violation of Iraq's independence and sovereignty as well as international law. No country whatsoever has a legal right to launch a military incursion into another country without the support of the United Nations Security Council. As with Cyprus, the sanctity of internationally recognised borders has been crushed again by the Turkish military in the context of Iraq. And with Cyprus again, the West is complicit with that. President Erdogan perfectly summed up Turkey, how Turkey regards the region it encompasses, when he told the Iraqi Prime Minister this October, and I quote, "You should know that we do what we want to do. Illegal military incursions in any part of the world are dangerous and set a dangerous precedent, especially in the most volatile region of the world, the Middle East. International law is continuously crushed under the tracks of Turkish tanks." Turning to the case of Libya, which as a result of Western intervention, and also Turkish, has become a failed state, we see the malignant hand of Turkey at play again in the country. With Libya currently being ravaged by civil war, Turkey, alongside Qatar, is actively supporting Islamist terrorist groups fighting in the country. Further to that, senior representatives of the Libyan government based in Tobruk have produced evidence to demonstrate that Turkish military aircraft are regularly flying in and out of Mitiga Air Base, which is controlled currently by Islamist forces, in order to aid Al-Qaeda affiliate groups in Libya, such as Ansar al-Sharia. Turkish support for Islamist terrorist groups in Libya demonstrates the deceitfulness of the West when it says that Turkey is invaluable in the fight against terrorism. It is actually the case that Turkey's support to terrorism is invaluable to the terrorists themselves. A former Libyan Prime Minister said that, and I quote, "Turkey is a state that is not dealing honestly with us. It is exporting weapons to us so the Libyan people can kill each other." We also have accounts by Turkish journalists which have exposed how Turkish ships have been detained by Greek and Egyptian authorities for containing weapons destined for Islamist terrorist groups fighting in Syria. So Turkey is using Islamist groups to expand its influence in the Eastern Mediterranean, and in doing so is strengthening the threat which a potent ideology of Islamism poses not just to the region which Turkey resides in, but to the world in general. However, no matter how diabolical Turkish support to Islamist terrorists in Libya is, it pales in comparison to what Turkey has been doing in Syria. The conflict in Syria, which is about to enter its sixth year, can on its own expose the destabilising role which Turkey plays in the region. There is little doubt that had Turkey not allowed tens of thousands of Islamists and jihadist fighters to cross into Syria from its territory, and had it not helped to arm them to the teeth, and had it not allowed Turkish soil to become a vast training base for them, the conflict in Syria would have ended years ago, albeit with some areas remaining volatile. Indeed, I would contend that Turkish foreign policy towards Syria is the most destructive in the history of the Republic of Turkey. destructive in how many people have died as a result, how many people have been maimed as a result, destructive in how many refugees have been created as a result, destructive in how many Islamist terrorist groups have emerged as a result, and destructive in how the world is now paying the price for the potency of these terrorist groups, all as a result of Turkey. Every terrorist group fighting against the Syrian government has been in receipt of support from Turkey, and I emphasise every terrorist group, from the Free Syrian Army to al-Nusra to ISIS, and that is an indisputable fact. To anyone who questions whether Turkey has helped the terrorists in Syria, I say this: how can tens of thousands of fighters, armed to the teeth, cross from Turkish soil to Syrian soil without being seen by Turkish border guards? On top of that, how has ISIS oil stolen from Syrian oil fields ended up in Turkey? Those two questions are merely the tip of the iceberg when it comes to amassing evidence to prove that Turkey is complicit in supporting Islamist terrorists in Syria. Erdogan is using the Islamist groups in Syria in an attempt to overthrow the Syrian government and bring about a pro-Turkish regime in Damascus, which would infinitely strengthen Turkey's overall influence and power in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East. And only a few months ago, Turkey launched an illegal military incursion into Syria to support its terrorist proxies there. Turkey's military presence in Syria is 100% illegal under international law and is a brutal violation of Syria's independence and sovereignty. And Erdogan has been very honest about why Turkish forces are now in Syria. He said, and I quote, "We are there to overthrow Assad." Under international law, President Assad is the legitimate leader of Syria and the only legitimate leader of Syria. Like with Turkish actions in Cyprus and Iraq, the West failed to defend international law when it failed to condemn the illegal Turkish military presence in Syria. Alas, the benefits to Turkey of having a blank cheque from Washington and London. Now, because of the Russian military campaign in Syria, the Syrian government will not collapse and will in fact emerge victorious at some point. However, what Turkey has given birth to in Syria and what it has fostered there will have repercussions in the Middle East, North Africa and Europe and the rest of the world in general for decades. Ordinary people are now facing a terrible threat from Islamist terrorism, in part because of Turkey's actions in Syria. And those actions were given the green light by the American and British governments because they share the same objective of Turkey, namely the overthrow of the Syrian government. In concluding, truly understanding the volatility of the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East and trying to remedy this volatility can only be achieved by penetrating the facade that Turkey is a force for stability in the region as projected by the West. As I have demonstrated, Turkey is a law unto itself in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East, and these regions are now suffering immeasurably because of this. But Turkey is only able to behave in such a manner because the West allows it to. Turkish leaders can break international law, can invade countries, can partition countries, and can support the extremist groups with the knowledge that they are protected by the US. The behaviour of Turkey in the West is anything but conducive to regional peace and stability. It is a recipe for catastrophe, as the case studies of Cyprus, Iraq, Libya, and Syria demonstrate. And the depressing reality is that there is virtually no hope in the foreseeable future for a change of policy from Turkey or the West. Alas, as Erdogan said, we do what we want to do. Thank you very much.